All right. So you want to boost your English fluency, right? Well, we're diving into something you might not expect. Morning routines.
Ah,
We're going deep on this video from Speak English with Class, and it's not like the typical, early bird gets the worm kind of advice.
right.
You shared this video with us, so I'm thinking you're looking for some new ideas for
Definitely some fresh ideas.
how to make the most of those mornings.
Absolutely. There's a lot of research actually backing up this whole idea that
Oh, really?
a well-structured morning routine can really boost your productivity.
Okay.
And not even just for language learning.
Interesting.
It's for everything, but we're looking at it specifically for English.
Yeah, how to make time for it.
Exactly.
So the video uses this analogy of dominoes to explain how mornings set the tone. Sometimes analogies, they can be overused, but I think this one really clicked for me.
I think it's pretty effective. The idea being that a smooth morning routine, it kind of sets off a chain reaction
Okay.
of positive outcomes
I like it.
throughout your day.
Yeah, each domino just falling right into place.
Exactly.
So for language learners, why is this so important?
Well, think about it. Yep. Your brain is fresh in the morning,
Okay.
so it's primed for absorbing, all this new information.
So it's like having that quiet time before the day really starts and
Exactly.
all the meetings and things.
It's like that focus you get just before a meeting at work, but for English.
I love that. Okay, but before we even get into the how-to of building a routine,
Right.
the video does something pretty smart. It encourages you to play detective.
It does. Yes. Figure out
Okay.
what's already sabotaging your mornings.
I like that.
So are you hitting the snooze button, 5 times? Or is it just a frantic scramble?
Every morning.
Yeah. You got to identify that villain in your morning routine before you can even think about a makeover.
Okay, so let's say you've identified your obstacle.
Okay.
What's next?
All right.
Is it as simple as wake up earlier, or is there more to it?
It's a little more nuanced than that. I think the video advocates for something a bit more strategic.
Okay.
Planning your morning the night before.
Oh, that makes sense.
Do future you a favor.
Huge favor. I know when I'm scrambling in the morning, it's usually because I didn't take those couple minutes the night before to just get things ready.
Exactly. So we're talking practical things like laying out your clothes, packing your bag, prepping breakfast, maybe even writing a to-do list and choosing your top 3 priorities.
I've read productivity research that actually emphasizes that exact thing.
Yeah.
Having that clear focus for the day can really reduce that overwhelm.
Absolutely.
So it's not just the logistics, it's also that mental roadmap.
It is.
But even with the best planning, if you're not waking up at a time that works for your body,
Right.
the whole routine can just fall apart.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, that's where I struggle sometimes.
Yeah.
The thought of becoming a super early riser
Oh, yeah?
just makes me want to stay in bed.
Right.
Thankfully, the video debunks that myth.
Yeah.
What's their approach?
So it's all about gradual adjustment instead of shocking your system
Right.
by trying to wake up 2 hours earlier.
Yeah.
Start with 15 to 30 minutes.
Okay.
Something manageable.
I like that.
And then you can slowly adjust further if you need to.
That's such an important point. Sustainable change, right?
Yeah.
The video mentions some fun tricks too, like moving your alarm across the room.
Oh, yeah.
So you have to physically get out of bed
Yeah.
to turn it off. I have a friend who swears by those sunrise alarm clocks
Oh, yeah.
that mimic the natural light.
Those could be really helpful, especially in the winter when
Yes.
it's so hard to get out of bed.
Okay, so beyond the tools and the techniques,
Mm.
a good morning routine,
Yeah.
especially one for language learning, should also include a mental element.
I think mindfulness is key here.
Okay, mindfulness.
Yeah.
I'll admit, this is one of those terms that sometimes my eyes glaze over a little bit.
I get
It can sound intimidating
It can.
or too woo-woo.
Right.
For those of us who are just trying to, get a handle on the subjunctive mood or whatever it may be,
For sure.
how does the video approach this?
Well, it uses a really clear analogy.
Yeah.
And I think it's letting the muddy water of your thoughts settle.
Okay.
It resonated with me because it really highlights that mindfulness isn't about emptying your mind completely.
Right.
It's just about creating that stillness before all the chatter of the day begins.
That's a great way to put it. It's finding that calm
Exactly.
before the storm.
Yes.
But how do we actually do that?
Okay.
How do we bring mindfulness into a busy morning when we're already trying to fit in, English practice.
Right. Well, there are some really simple techniques.
Okay.
Like deep breathing, just a minute or two of focused breaths.
Yeah.
Inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, things like that.
I've heard that deep breathing can have actual physical benefits, like lowering your heart rate and things.
It can.
Which, let's face it, we could all use a little bit of that in the morning.
Especially in the morning.
Right.
Yeah.
And if deep breathing isn't your thing, there's also morning reflection, like thinking about one thing you're grateful for.
Yeah.
Or setting like a positive intention for the day.
Yeah. It could be as simple as, I'm ready to learn something new today.
I love that.
Or I will speak English confidently today.
It's like setting that positive tone before you even open your language learning app.
Exactly.
Okay, so speaking of feeling energized, the video also talks about movement as part of this morning routine.
It's not about squeezing in a full workout or anything.
Okay.
It's more like powering up your body.
Got it.
Like you would a computer. Just some gentle stretches, a quick walk around the block, or even just dancing to an English song.
I love that.
Yeah.
Dancing to an English song.
Get the blood flowing, boost your alertness.
And it's like sneaking in some extra listening practice while you're at it.
Multitasking.
I like it. And speaking of language practice,
right?
I'm guessing that's a key part of this whole morning routine.
Oh, it is. It's essential. Consistency is key here.
Okay.
Even 5 to 10 minutes of focused practice in the morning.
Yeah.
Makes a big difference over time.
So what are some creative ways to just squeeze in those mini practice sessions?
Well, think about the things you already do.
Okay.
Like you could listen to an English podcast while you make coffee or read a short news article online.
Yeah.
Even just describe your surroundings out loud to yourself.
I've heard that talking to yourself in English can be really helpful for building fluency.
It can, for sure.
Don't underestimate the power of writing.
Right.
Like journaling in English. Even a few sentences.
Yeah.
Would be a great way to just get those thoughts flowing.
Definitely.
Okay, so we've got all these tips.
Right.
But how do we know if it's actually working?
How do we track our progress?
Yeah, the video mentions tracking progress and reflecting.
Right. It's like checking your GPS on a road trip. Are you still on course, or do we need to make some adjustments?
So what can we use to track our progress and make sure that we're actually sticking to this routine?
Well, they suggest things like habit trackers.
Okay.
Which can be really motivating, just visually seeing those boxes checked off. You can use a journal just to reflect on what's working, what's not.
I've found that journaling can be especially helpful for celebrating those small wins.
Oh, absolutely. And, speaking of small wins, let's take a moment to acknowledge that the video also includes a section called Charlotte's Vocabulary Section.
Okay.
And it's packed with useful language related to all this stuff we're talking about.
Let's peek at some of the words and phrases that stood out to you.
Okay, so one that I really liked was frazzled.
Frazzled.
Yeah, which I think perfectly captures that feeling of being stressed and overwhelmed.
Oh, I know that feeling.
Especially in the morning.
Yeah.
Another one I thought was really good was obstacle.
Okay.
Which just means something that stands in the way
of
achieving your goal.
Makes sense.
And of course, mindfulness, which we've already talked about quite a bit.
Yeah.
Reflection is another good one. Just highlighting the importance of taking the time to review and analyze how you're doing.
Yeah, and ultimately we want to be productive, right?
Exactly. We want to make the most of these morning routines.
Yeah.
So there's even more vocabulary gems in there that we can kind of unpack in part 2 of our deep dive.
So before we move on,
yeah,
let's just pause for a second and let all this sink in. We've talked about planning mindfulness movement, many English practice sessions.
There's a lot.
What's one small change you can make to your morning routine starting tomorrow to bring more of this into your day?
That's a great question.
Welcome back. I don't know about you, but that last section really got me thinking about my own morning routine.
Yeah, it's always good to pause and kind of reflect on those things, right?
It is, especially when we're thinking about making some changes.
Yeah, for sure. And we were just about to get into Charlotte's vocabulary section.
Yes.
Which, as we mentioned, goes beyond, just simple definitions.
It does. And she gives you real world examples so you can actually use these words.
Exactly.
In your own conversations, which I think is so important.
Yeah.
When you're learning a language.
For sure.
One that I really resonated with was scramble.
Oh, yeah. Scramble is a good one.
It's like it just perfectly captures that frantic energy that we're all trying to avoid.
Yes, that mad dash for keys and phone and coffee.
Yeah, whatever it may be.
And then there's chaos.
Oh, yeah.
Which takes it to a whole other level, right?
Chaos is real.
It's when everything's happening at once and you're just trying to keep up.
But with a little bit of planning and a dose of that centered energy we were talking about earlier,
All right.
we can tame it.
Exactly.
Speaking of centered, that's another word that Charlotte highlights.
Yeah, and it's such a valuable concept.
It is.
For morning routines, just finding that inner calm and focus.
I think that sense of being centered is so important for language learning too, you know?
Absolutely.
If you're feeling scattered and stressed, it's hard to absorb anything.
It is.
Or practice effectively.
And it makes it hard to be consistent too, which is another word she talks about.
Oh yeah, consistent and accountable, right?
Yes. Those two go hand in hand.
They do.
When you're building a new habit like a morning routine.
Consistency is key.
Yes.
To anything really, but especially language learning.
Especially language learning.
And it's not about being perfect every day.
Right.
It's just showing up and making an effort.
Yeah, just keep going.
Even when you don't feel like it.
Even when you don't feel like it. And that's where accountability comes in.
Right.
Having those tools.
Yeah, those habit trackers and journals.
Yeah.
That can really help. I think it's so important to find that balance between pushing ourselves and also being kind to ourselves when things don't go perfectly.
Right. And that's something that Speak English with Class video really emphasizes.
Okay.
You know, it's about progress, not perfection.
So true.
And even small steps forward
can
make a big difference over time.
Okay, so let's zoom out for a second and recap what we've learned so far.
Right.
What are those essential ingredients for a successful morning routine for someone who's serious about their English?
Okay, well, planning is crucial.
Okay.
Taking time the night before to lay out your clothes, pack your bags, make that to-do list.
It's like giving yourself a head start.
It is the day
that.
Before the chaos even has a chance.
Before the chaos, I like. Okay, what else?
So then there's that mental aspect. Incorporating some mindfulness practices just to calm your mind and set a positive tone.
Yeah.
Even a minute or two of deep breathing.
Okay.
Some gratitude exercises or just setting intentions.
It's about creating that mental space.
Exactly.
For learning.
Yes.
Which is so important.
It is.
And don't forget about getting your body moving.
Right.
Stretching, walking, dancing.
Anything.
Just to get that blood flowing.
Exactly. Wake up your mind and body.
Plus, we talked about how you can even sneak in some extra listening practice.
Yes.
If you choose like an English song to dance to.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. Okay, and then of course,
the heart of it all.
The heart of it all.
Those mini English practice sessions.
Yes.
Finding ways to weave those in.
Yeah.
Throughout your morning routine.
Podcasts, news articles.
Journaling, talking to yourself.
The possibilities are endless.
Yeah.
And then finally, tracking your progress. Yeah. Reflecting on what's working and what's not. Those habit trackers, those journals come in handy.
Yes, they do.
It's all about celebrating those small wins.
For sure.
And acknowledging that building a new routine is a journey.
It's a journey, not a destination.
Not a destination. I like that a lot. Now, I know some people listening might be thinking, okay, this is all great in theory.
Yeah.
But I'm already struggling just to get out the door in the morning.
Right.
How am I supposed to fit all of this in?
And that's where the Speak English with Class video really shines, I think, because it emphasizes starting small.
Okay.
You don't have to overhaul your whole routine overnight.
Small steps, big results.
Exactly. Choose one or two things and build from there.
I like that a lot. And that brings us to a really exciting part of our deep dive.
Right.
We're going to explore some more advanced strategies that can really take your morning language learning routine to the next level.
If you're ready to level up,
yes,
join us for part 3.
We're going to delve into techniques like immersion bursts, visualization, and language journaling. All right, welcome back to our deep dive. We've talked a lot about how to create a morning routine that really sets you up for language learning success.
Right. We've got that foundation in place.
Now it's time to get into some more advanced strategies, stuff that maybe you wouldn't immediately think of when you're picturing your morning coffee.
Exactly. Things that can really amplify your learning, even if you only have a few minutes.
So let's start with something called immersion bursts. Which sounds a little bit intense, to be honest.
It does.
Like I'm about to be thrown into the English-speaking deep end.
Right, right.
So what does that actually mean?
Okay, so it's actually a lot simpler than it sounds. Think about your typical morning routine. You're probably already going through a series of actions. almost on autopilot, making coffee, getting dressed, maybe packing a lunch.
Okay.
The idea is to turn those everyday activities into mini immersion experiences.
So instead of just passively listening to an English podcast while I'm doing those things,
I should be more actively engaging with the language.
Exactly. So let's say you're making coffee.
Okay.
As you're grinding the beans, you could say to yourself, I'm grinding the beans for my coffee. While the water's heating up, you could describe the aroma. It smells so good. Things like that.
I like that.
Simple.
So it's like turning my kitchen into a language lab.
Yeah, exactly.
But without the lab coat.
Without the lab coats.
Okay, so it's really about finding those little opportunities throughout my morning to just think in English and even speak in English.
Even for a few seconds.
Even if it's just for a few seconds.
Just those little bursts can really add up.
Okay, I love that it's so practical.
Yeah.
What about visualization? We touched on that a little bit earlier, but I'm curious how it can be used specifically for language learning.
Yeah, so visualization is such a powerful tool, and not just for athletes or performers, it's for language learners too. Imagine a situation where you might need to use English.
Okay.
Like ordering food at a restaurant or asking for directions.
Okay, I'm picturing myself in a bustling cafe in London trying to order a flat white.
Perfect. So now visualize yourself speaking confidently and clearly in English, using the right words, the right grammar. Imagine yourself understanding the other person's response perfectly and just feeling that sense of accomplishment.
It's like I'm creating this mental movie where I'm the star and I'm fluent in English.
And the more you practice these visualizations, the more confident you'll feel when you encounter similar situations in real life.
I could see how that would be so helpful for people who get a little bit nervous speaking English, in public.
Absolutely. Visualization can also be a really great way to practice specific vocabulary or grammar points. Let's say you're learning travel-related vocabulary. You could visualize yourself checking into a hotel, asking for directions, or even ordering room service, all while using that new vocabulary.
So it's like taking those words out of the textbook and putting them into action in my mind.
Exactly.
Okay, what about language journaling? Is that simply keeping a diary in English, or is there more to it?
Yeah, there's definitely more to it. It's really a tool for actively engaging with your language learning journey.
Okay, so what kinds of things would I write about in a language journal?
Well, you can use it to track your progress, jot down new words or phrases you've learned, analyze your mistakes, set goals, brainstorm new learning strategies, even just reflect on your overall experience as a language learner.
So it's like having a personal language learning coach all in one notebook.
And the act of writing itself can be incredibly beneficial for language acquisition. It forces you to slow down, think carefully about the words you're using, and pay attention to grammar and sentence structure.
Any tips for making language journaling more effective?
Yeah, using prompts can be really helpful.
Right.
For example, you could write about a recent conversation you had in English, a challenge you're facing in your language learning, or even a dream you had in English.
Okay, so it gives me that starting point and takes the pressure off of having to come up with something to write about every day.
Exactly. And another tip is to make it a habit to review your journal entries regularly. It's incredibly rewarding to look back and see how far you've come, how much your skills have improved.
And it can help you spot patterns, notice the things that you're doing well and the areas where you might need a little bit more practice.